The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty ranch as Samuel Hayes stood on his porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the horizon blur in the heat. At 62, he had grown accustomed to the silence that surrounded his property like a worn blanket. The cattle moved lazily in the distance, and the only sounds were the occasional lowing of the herd and the creak of the old windmill that had been turning for 40 years. He was about to head back inside when he noticed something unusual on the dirt road that led to his gate. Two small figures were walking slowly toward his ranch, their shadows tiny against the vast landscape. Samuel squinted, setting down his mug and stepping off the porch. As they drew closer, he could see it was two children, a girl who couldn't be more than 8 or 9, holding the hand of a boy who looked even younger. The girl wore a faded yellow dress that had seen better days, and her brown hair hung in tangled waves around her face. The boy clutched a small stuffed rabbit that had lost most of its fur. Both children looked exhausted, their faces streaked with dust and tears. Samuel walked toward them, his weathered boots kicking up small clouds of dirt. When he was close enough to speak without shouting, he stopped and removed his hat. "Morning," he said gently. "You two look like you've been walking a long ways." The little girl looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. She swallowed hard before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "Our dad died this morning. We got nowhere to go." The words hit Samuel like a physical blow. He crouched down to their eye level, his heart already breaking for these two small souls who had found their way to his doorstep. "What are your names, sweetheart?" "I'm Lucy," the girl said, her voice steadier now. "This is my brother Tommy. He's 5, I'm 8. Where's your mama?" Samuel asked gently. Lucy's face crumpled slightly. "She died when Tommy was born. It's just been us and Daddy, but he got real sick. He said if anything happened to him, we should walk to the big ranch with the red barn. Said the man there might help us." Samuel looked back at his property. His barn had indeed been painted red many years ago, though the color had faded to a rusty orange. He was the only rancher for miles around with a barn that color. Somehow, their father had known about him, had trusted him enough to send his children here in their darkest hour. "Well then," Samuel said, standing slowly and extending his hand to Lucy, "I reckon you'd better come inside. You both look hungry, and it's getting hot out here." Lucy hesitated for just a moment before taking his hand. Tommy clung to his sister's other side, his thumb in his mouth around the ears of his raggedy rabbit. Samuel led them toward the house, his mind racing. He lived alone and had for nearly 15 years, ever since his wife Martha had passed from cancer. They'd never been blessed with children of their own, despite years of hoping and trying. The house had felt too big and too quiet ever since. "You like pancakes?" he asked as they reached the porch steps. Tommy nodded enthusiastically, speaking for the first time. "Daddy made pancakes sometimes, but not like restaurants." "Well, I'm not much of a cook either," Samuel admitted with a small smile, "but I make a mean pancake when I put my mind to it." Inside the kitchen, Samuel busied himself with mixing batter while the children sat at his small table. Lucy kept one arm around Tommy, who had fallen asleep against her shoulder despite being upright in the chair. The exhaustion of whatever they'd been through was written in every line of their small bodies. "How far did you walk?" Samuel asked as he heated the skillet. "We started walking when the sun came up," Lucy said. "Daddy died in his sleep. I tried to wake him up, but..." She trailed off, staring at the table. "You did the right thing," Samuel said firmly. "You took care of your brother, and you found help. That takes courage." As he cooked, Samuel found himself studying the children. Lucy had their father's strong jawline, he imagined, and the determined set to her shoulders spoke of someone who had been forced to grow up too fast. Tommy, even in sleep, kept a tight grip on both his sister and his stuffed rabbit, as if afraid they might disappear. The pancakes were golden and fluffy when Samuel plated them, adding butter and syrup. The smell woke Tommy, who rubbed his eyes and looked around in confusion before remembering where he was. "These are the best pancakes ever," Tommy announced after his first bite, syrup running down his chin. Samuel felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. "Thank you, son, that's high praise." While they ate, Samuel found himself making mental calculations. He had plenty of room in the house, 3 empty bedrooms upstairs that hadn't been used in years. He had savings, enough to provide for 2 children if needed. But more than that, he found himself imagining what it would be like to have voices in the house again, to have a reason to cook real meals instead of heating up canned soup. "Lucy," he said carefully, "do you have any other family? Grandparents, aunts or uncles?" She shook her head. "Daddy said it was just us." His parents died before I was born, and Mama's family didn't want anything to do with us after she died. Samuel nodded, understanding more than he wanted to about families that turned their backs on those who needed them most. His own siblings had scattered to the winds years ago, pursuing lives far from the dusty isolation of ranch country. "What's going to happen to us?" Lucy asked, her voice small again. Samuel looked at both children, seeing the fear behind Lucy's brave facade and the innocent trust in Tommy's eyes. He thought about the silence that had been his constant companion, about the empty rooms upstairs, about the loneliness that had settled into his bones like arthritis. "Well," he said slowly, "I suppose that depends on what you'd like to happen. This is a big house for just one old rancher. Gets mighty quiet around here. Could we maybe stay for a little while?" Lucy asked hesitantly. "Just until we figure out what else to do." Samuel pretended to consider this, though his heart had already made the decision the moment he'd seen them walking up his road. "I think that could be arranged. But I should warn you, there are chores to be done around here. Chickens to feed, eggs to collect, vegetables to tend in the garden. Think you might be up for helping with that kind of work?" Tommy perked up immediately. "I like chickens. Do you have a lot of chickens?" "More than I know what to do with," Samuel admitted with a chuckle. "And they lay more eggs than one person can eat." Over the following days, Samuel found his routine completely transformed. Lucy proved to be remarkably capable for her age, helping with cooking and keeping Tommy entertained while Samuel worked with the cattle. Tommy shadowed him everywhere, asking endless questions about the animals and the ranch, his stuffed rabbit always tucked under one arm. Samuel showed them how to collect eggs without frightening the hens, how to identify which vegetables were ready to harvest, and how to brush the old mare he kept for riding the property lines. Lucy was a natural with the animals, gentle but confident, while Tommy provided a running commentary on everything they did. "Why don't the cows have names?" Tommy asked one afternoon as they watched the herd from the fence line. "There are too many of them," Samuel explained. "But I suppose we could name a few of the special ones." "That one looks like a Margaret," Lucy said, pointing to a particularly stately-looking heifer. "And that one's definitely a Bob," Tommy added, indicating a bull who was scratching himself against a fence post. Samuel found himself laughing more than he had in years. The house no longer echoed with emptiness but rang with children's voices, the sound of running feet on the stairs, and the comfortable noise of a family going about their daily business. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch while Samuel played his old guitar and the children took turns choosing songs. Lucy had a sweet singing voice, while Tommy preferred to make up his own lyrics that usually involved his stuffed rabbit going on various adventures. 3 weeks after their arrival, Samuel sat in his kitchen after the children had gone to bed, staring at the papers spread before him. He'd contacted a lawyer in town about the legal aspects of guardianship, about what it would take to make their arrangement official. The process would be complicated, but not impossible. The next morning, he found Lucy sitting on the porch steps, looking out at the horizon with an expression too serious for her young face. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, settling beside her. "Do you think Daddy would be okay with us being here?" She asked quietly. "Sometimes I feel bad for being happy." Samuel considered this carefully. "I think your daddy loved you and Tommy more than anything in the world. And I think he'd want you to be safe and happy and loved. Don't you?" Lucy nodded slowly. "He used to say that home wasn't a place, it was the people who cared about you." "Smart man," Samuel said. "And you know what? I've been thinking. This ranch has been in my family for 3 generations. It's going to need someone to take care of it when I'm too old to do it myself." "Really?" Lucy's eyes widened. "Really? But it would have to be someone who loves the land and the animals, someone who understands that being a rancher is more than just a job. It's a way of life." "We love it here," Lucy said earnestly. "Tommy talks about the chickens all the time, and I like helping with the garden." "Then maybe," Samuel said, reaching over to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, "maybe we should make this official. Would you and Tommy like to stay permanently? Would you like to be my family?" Lucy's face lit up brighter than the morning sun. "Do you mean it? Really and truly?" "Really and truly," Samuel confirmed, pulling her into a hug. As if summoned by the joy in his sister's voice, Tommy appeared in the doorway, still clutching his rabbit and rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's happening?" "Samuel wants us to stay forever," Lucy announced. "We're going to be a real family." Tommy launched himself off the porch and into Samuel's arms. "Does this mean I can name all the chickens?" "Every single one of them," Samuel promised, his voice thick with emotion. The lonely rancher who had whispered his way through 15 years of solitude found his voice again in the laughter of children, in bedtime stories and morning conversations, in the simple joy of being needed and loved. The two children who had lost everything discovered that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. And on that dusty ranch with the red barn, under the vast Texas sky, a family was born not of blood but of choice, not of obligation but of love.